So hello, everyone, or should I say guten tag, eguete tag, buongiorno or bonjour. So we're in the country of the Alps, great chocolate, Swatch brand, and continuous support for innovation in Serbia. We're in Switzerland. Our guest today is Dr. Andrej Vackovski. He is the CEO of NTP and a member of the executive board of the Swiss Startup Fund. So thank you so much for joining us in our Raising Talks, conversations with successful entrepreneurs that are being organized by the Science and Technology Park in Belgrade within the Raising Starts program. This program that's aimed at very early stage startups and many other activities in the Science and Technology Park are actually supported by the government of Switzerland. So this is a little, special welcome to you today.
Thank you very much, Kako, for having me. By the way, I know that this country is famous for exporting chocolate, but actually we are exporting more innovation than chocolate. But probably we will have this covered in this session later, I guess.
That's great to hear. Let me introduce myself. I'm Katarina Popovic. I am the startup founder and the public speaking coach. I'm currently the founder of the Pitch Consultancy. And in front of the Science and Technology Park, I will be moderating this conversation. So let's get down to business. In a recent podcast that I've listened to that Deloitte has published about the Swiss startup scene, there's been very different stories about innovation in Switzerland, from more traditional industries like watchmaking that is being made more sustainable to more modern industries like fintech unicorns that are coming from Switzerland. My attention caught this interesting comment from the founder of Dart Labs. She said that Swiss companies often end up as features, but not as full products. And this rings close to home. So my question to you is, on one hand, there is, financial like fintech unicorns coming from Switzerland. On the other hand, there's this comment from Ms. Andriana Walcott. So what is your experience? What is the startup climate like in Switzerland?
So in general, I would say Switzerland did also participate in that global trend, I would say, in the last 20, 30 years, that funding new businesses became an important element in an economy. And so, yes, there are startups, yes, there are programs to support startup, and all the traditional companies, they like, to participate in those things and to decorate themselves with a few startups around them. But obviously, on the other hand, we are also a very small country. I mean, compared to others, so the same category as Serbia. So that's, for example, why B2C startups are rather difficult to start in this company. But there are a few industries such as financial services and life sciences that are very strong in this country. And so B2B startups around these industries, they have potential to be successful and grow.
Great. What is the NetCetera experience? I'm interested to hear a little bit about your company.
So our company had the 25-year anniversary last year, and sometimes people ask me, so where is that path going? I consider ourselves still a startup, even though, we do more than 100 million Swiss francs revenue, and we have more than 800 people and so on, but still the founding organization is on deck, and there hasn't been kind of a huge exit, if you wish, yet. So we consider us a startup with this gray hair, you see. We started initially in 95 when the internet became commercial, and we were tech people, tech guys that really understood how the internet works from our research activities before, and we knew we want to do something there. But we didn't have a lot of previous experience. I mean, I had another company before that actually went out of business, a software company, but this was a new space. And it took us really quite a long time to become successful also as a product company and not only as a service company, but we are now there where we really can also start to scale up internationally.
Well, congratulations. 25 years is amazing in this, fast changing environment of startups. I also wanted to ask you, Switzerland is very interesting. The way I started this conversation is because I know there's 3 languages spoken, or actually there's 4, if we add this version of like a Swiss version of German, right? How does that impact the market? Does market differ with different languages? How do products position themselves in that varied market?
So with fourth language, you were probably referring to Romanish, which is a language which is somewhere between Italian and Latin, but that's a very, very small fraction of people that speak that. So these are the 3 languages, with the Swiss German variant being the dominant one, and then French and then Italian. And I think that this multilingual situation that we have in this country is obviously a little bit of an impediment, because when you do products, it's usually useful if you try to address all the languages, and so have your user interface in IT startups, for example, in 3 languages plus English, obviously. But it also helps to have a little bit wider cultural scope in the beginning. Very often when I talk also to, for example, US-based startups, it takes a while for them to understand that the Earth doesn't stop at the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean. And if you're here, you already are very well aware of the fact there are multiple languages, maybe multiple cultural also orientations. But what we have to say is that although in the German-speaking part, where I'm also based in Zurich, the interesting thing is when a startup is growing, it does not first grow to the French or Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, but they first grow, say, to Austria and Germany. And then the step to the French part is maybe even a little bit a larger one, because from people's daily lives, those that live in the German or Swiss German speaking part tend to be a little bit more oriented towards Germany and Austria, to the larger brothers there, whereas those in the French part, they maybe tend a little bit more to France. But on the other hand, having this multilingual setup, as I said before, it helps to be kind of prepared for also growth into different regions.
Yes, I was just thinking that it actually helps you expand. If you have plans to expand, you already have this inner experience in your own country. Could you tell us a little bit about which industries are, if I can say, trending in Switzerland? I know that's not the luckiest word, but there's always these industries that are hot at the very moment. And which industries would that be at that moment?
So it's not chocolate. Even though, I mean, we are proud of the chocolate here, but there are a lot of discussions whether the Belgian one is better than the Swiss one, whatever. So very strong industries in this country are obviously the financial services and the life sciences, because we have some of the multinationals here in the country, their headquarters here in the country. And so they do also drive, obviously, development in the area. So say Roche and Novartis in Basel, or the big banks here in Zurich. We do have also quite an interesting food sector, or food not in the sense that there's food produced, but food in the area of maybe more also multinational trade. For example, Nestle is based in Switzerland. I think also for all commodities and so on, a lot of the trade of commodities happens in Switzerland, but that's not much of a value generating business, so that's just a trade. If you look maybe what's hot for startups and for new companies, I would say everything that's around sustainability is gets quite attention. So anything that helps, for example, companies reduce their impact on the environment or social, or everything that helps to increase their ESG rating is something that gets open ears from investors.
Great. I also read yesterday there was a fair I think it was in Zurich, and it was related to the innovations in food, the food lab. We have some startups from Serbia. They're doing great in the US with honey without bees, and I'm reading their updates. So it was interesting to read. It was specifically in Switzerland. So I guess the food innovation is also happening in Switzerland too. I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
No. It's fine. I just want to say I'm totally not a specialist in the food sector, but I think this is mostly driven because of those large multinational conglomerates that have their headquarters here, and so part of innovation and research for them is also here. For example, also the largest coffee trading worldwide, or cacao trading, is happening in this country. But they are kind of secret industries, but they're very powerful, and in their, I would say, aura, things can happen.
This is very interesting. I didn't know that about coffee and cocoa. I also wanted to ask, because entrepreneurs usually ask those questions, and that is how hard or how easy is to raise capital? Like what do VCs and angels ask for in Swiss market? On a scale of 1 to 10, how hard it is to raise money, I would say it is 11 or 12. Okay.
But that's not only in Switzerland, I have to say. I mean, that's worldwide. I would say this country is a little bit more conservative than others. So it is even a little bit harder. And this contrasts a little bit to the the image that some of the startup organizations are also trying to convey and say, yeah, okay, we can attract a lot of VCs in our events, and you can pitch your cases and so on. But then really to secure funding and have the money on your bank account, that's totally not easy. But again, as I said before, it's not easy everywhere. So,
yeah, it's never easy.
It's never easy, yes.
The thing that I've noticed is that in the European countries versus the US, oftentimes investors ask for more proof in the EU or European countries, not only EU. They ask for more proof, like business models, revenue. You have this list that you have to present, even though you're just starting as a startup. Versus the United States, the founders have told me they ask for less. So, do you have any experience with that, or?
Well, probably what you're describing is here. What is the advertised risk appetite versus the actual risk appetite? So the advertised is, hey, I'm a VC and I want to invest in in future success. But then, on the other hand, the money in my pocket is still closer when it is in my pocket and not somewhere else. And I think this distinguishes a little bit those VCs or sources of funding that really care also about your business when they understand, for example, that dilemma that you just mentioned. So, obviously everybody wants to invest in something that already works, that there is a proof in that there is no risk and so on. But so if you have already revenue, or then you are not looking for funding, or then you're looking maybe for growth financing or something like that, which is a totally different pair of shoes. So I see that dilemma quite often, and I think one of the elements there, and the US was, I think, in the past quite good in that, is also when the governments try to break through this pattern. So what I mean is not with funding, but with being, for example, customer of early products. I mean when you look at public tenders for whatever it is, be it IT or other things, then very often you see in the requirements that they want to have the most innovative new product, but with 20 years of experience or something like that. Or you have to provide a certain size. You have to say, we are big and powerful and something like that. Because they don't want to go into the risk to engage a startup that hasn't proven anything, but on the other hand, you want to have the newest thing. And for example, a lot of technology innovations, such as the internet, they came up also because the government did engage with organizations that were not able to provide that track record. So I think it is indeed true that maybe in Europe and also in Switzerland, it is somehow that paradox that investors or customers, they want to to engage with low risk, but still into something that is built on totally new things on the blue ocean or something.
New things, yes. Yeah. I also wanted to ask you if a startup from, say, Serbia wants to expand to Switzerland, would there be a few steps they could take? Is there an incubator or an accelerator that you would recommend or know about? So we'll just make this like a little, map with a few steps for a founder to help them to orient themselves.
So this is obviously a little bit hard to answer because the space is huge, and when you're a food startup, it's probably different than when you are an IT startup or whatever. In general, I would say if you are into B2C, that there is no point to first grow into Switzerland because the country has 8 million people, and as you said before, different languages and so on. And if you really want to address end consumers, then going to a large market such as our neighbors, Germany or France or Italy or US, so it's just, you have just more market potential. But if you're in B2B and in those special areas that we've been talking about, maybe financial services, life science, sustainability, or trading of commodities and so on, I think then it could be a worthwhile thing to do. There are a lot of offers. There are some. The government is doing things. I mean, we can maybe also provide to your viewers a list of a few links. Then there are kind of that there's an impact hub. There are other institutions that can be used. But I think before you go into those platforms, I think it is important to understand what you are actually looking for. If you're coming here for fundraising, it's different than if you're coming here to find customers, or if you're coming here to attract talent, which could be something you want to do, but it will be very expensive. I mean, just to warn you of that. So depending on why you want to establish and open here, there will be different ways to go forward.
Right. I'm thinking Raising Starts program here in Serbia is the first pre-seed help for startups. Is there something similar? And it's being done with the help of government of Switzerland. So this is really interesting. Is there something similar being organized in the Switzerland itself?
So for Swiss-based non-exporting startups, there are not many government support programs. There is one called in the Swiss. This is more in the area where then the government, for example, helps to finance research in public universities that accompany a startup. For example, if you're a life science startup and you want to cooperate with university, then they might provide funds that finance university, so you have to finance on yourself. But in terms of cash, that the government is giving cash, seed money, that's not something here. Obviously, you can find business angels here in the country, but typically that would also, I think, to find business angels, you somehow need to have a network. You have to find someone who can recommend you to someone or something like that. Just coming as a no-name to a pitch show, that's very hard. I mean, obviously, if your case is so super exciting, then you will find money anyhow. But I mean, I don't want to sound negative, but probably all of your viewers and participants in your program, they know that raising money is just very difficult wherever you want to do it.
Of course, and it's very specific for each market. So it's good to know, as you said, why you're going where you're going and what are your goals, and have a reason to be there. Also, I'm interested is there a community, like a startup community of Switzerland, something that doesn't have to have that name, but like a network of startup founders and mentors and investors and people who are closely knit together?
Yes, there are a few of those, I would say, even informal networks that happen, from people that meet each other at different places where they are pitching the case and so on. I think they are a little bit different from industry. In industry, there's, for example, a SICTIC. This is the Investors Club for IT investments, and they are organizing frequent pitch days. And if you're a startup and participate there, maybe in the first few you don't even make it to the finals, but the next one you make it there, and so people do exchange. Then there is the Impact Hub. I mean, that's a global network, but they have also a few locations here wherever you can exchange with your peers. So I don't think that these communities they are not formal, but informal ones they are there, and then so you don't even have to look very intensively for them. They will somehow come to you if you participate.
Right. I am also interested in the nature of networking, because that also tends to differ in different markets and different communities. How easy is it to network? Like, how open are people to warm intros? How open they are to cold emails? Those questions when you want to reach out to someone and then how easy or how hard is that in Switzerland?
I think in those startup communities, probably it is quite easy because these communities are also very international. So it is not like, okay, if you're coming from a different country, that you will be kind of the outside of it. I would say 80% of the people are somehow international. So from that perspective, probably it is not that hard. If you want to network kind of is a traditional business, say you want to pitch your case to the CEO of a large insurance, then with connections, you can have your appointment within a month. Without connections, you're waiting 3 years for that. So for these things, it is an important to try to find people. But for example, if you're using platforms such as LinkedIn or whatever, I think you can connect to people. People are open also to such cold connections, if you wish. If you provide some content with that, and then if you tell people why you're contacting them, and it's not only because your profile looks interesting, but yeah.
Right. Also, an interesting question comes up when you think about expanding. That is, can a non-resident open a company in Switzerland?
Yes, as a non-resident, you can open a company. You will need someone who is a resident that can take over the management aspects of the company. So, for example, if you would have to have a local person in the board or a local person assigned as director or something like that. So basically, the administration wants to be able to have someone in the country that can be accountable for that organization, but the ownership can be totally from non-residents.
Okay,
it is actually, maybe I can add here, in Switzerland is not in the European Union. However, we are surrounded by the European Union, so all the countries around us, they are. And so there are some multinational contracts with the European Union that makes quite a lot of steps easier for member states of the European Union and not that easy for other states. So say from Serbia, that is not yet in the European Union, it's a little bit harder, so you have to have that local resident, and so whereas for the others it's easier, but that shouldn't be a problem. So I mean it will take a little time and a little money, but not so much. But it's possible.
And also, is there something like, because, for example, many countries in Europe are hunting for talent, and in that hunt for talent, they create these special programs. They create entrepreneurial visas, and they try to ease the way for talent to come in. Is there such a thing in Switzerland?
Yes. So there is. So again, I have to distinguish from European Union states, and in order for European Union states, there is an agreement between Switzerland, which is not members, and the others, that there is a free movement of people. So if you are say in Bulgaria, then you can basically just come and work in Switzerland without any restrictions. But for other countries, say for example Serbia, there is first of all a quota for how many permits yearly are given out, and unfortunately we have a few very large multinationals here, like Google is, for example, in Zurich, and they have the largest engineering site outside of the United States here in Zurich, and then they are very early in the year already eating up a lot of those permits. So that's why in smaller companies have it a little bit more difficult. Now, if you are a founder and you want to come here as a founder, you can get also a working permit here, but you will have to show them kind of credible business plan. So there's no joke, but the government will then look at your business plan and see either your business is already profitable, if not, is it kind of credible that that this can happen, and it's not just kind of a pretext to get a work permit.
Right.
So it is somewhere between. Yeah, the government is with one hand trying to help you come in, and with the other hand they are pushing a little bit back. But I would say if there is sufficient merit in what you want to do, it should be doable.
Right. You just mentioned that Google has the largest. Did you say largest center outside of the U.S.?
Yes.
That's very interesting for the startup community. How is that helping or not helping the startup community? Are there programs? How's that for the local startup?
Well, it is for us. It is kind of a two-sided coin, because on the one hand, they are obviously attracting a lot of talents, because it's kind of obvious. So it is not so easy to keep up in terms of compensation you offer people and stuff like that. But on the other hand, I think they brought in a kind of a different flavor also in the business ecosystem here that was really for centuries dominated by the traditional banks and insurances, and ties and everything, and very secret, and so I personally, I'm happy about them being there, and it's not only them. I mean, Facebook is strongly growing here. Walt Disney Studios, they have a large site here, and so on. So in that tech sector, I think for us as a tech company, it's very positive. It's maybe not so positive for, I don't know, for people in other areas, because obviously those multinational companies, they are also pushing up the rent prices and stuff like that. So
salaries and rent prices.
Yeah.
And then the lifestyle changes.
Yes.
I also wanted to ask you, these are the things we do in all our conversations with entrepreneurs who are experienced, and that is to share 3 advice for startup founders, some things that you experienced yourself and you found it helpful for you.
So maybe my first advice would be not to get eaten up too much by fundraising. I mean, we mentioned that, or we covered that a few times in our conversation, but fundraising is hard, and fundraising can be also super frustrating. And it is something that can consume a lot of your energy. And so if you find ways where you can kind of also pursue your business and not only run from one page to the others and optimize your pitch deck and so on, that's something I would strongly recommend. I mean, obviously, cash flow is better than having an investment, but as a startup, first you have to have something before you have cash flow. There is a debate that we often have is, for example, is it healthy for a startup to try to get cash flow from side activities that are maybe not in the core of the value proposition that the startup has, but just to generate cash flow so that you can survive. For example, to offer consulting services, to work for hire or whatever. And I personally think it is not so bad. Some people say, yeah, well, if you do that, then you're defocusing yourself, and then you are, maybe spending 50% of your time as a consultant and only 50% of the time to make your product work. But if you don't do that, then maybe you spend 50% of your time for fundraising, and every no that you get from a potential investor is kind of dragging you down and so on. So that would be my really main advice. And maybe the second one, that's a more a detailed one, but very often when I talk also to young startup, I realize that they have maybe a super cool idea what they want to do when they dream of the success, when they make the unicorn exit or whatever. But actually, they are not very fluent with financials. And now I'm a technical guy, but I had the luck that 40 years ago, one of my first commercial software engagements I did was to program an accounting software, and so there I learned accounting, and I see how useful it is to understand, for example, accounting, to understand the jargon that those financial people are talking, when they say EBIT or EBITDA and so on. And not only having heard that word, but understand what it actually means. It's not so hard. You can find online material, but if you just invest a little bit to make yourself also financially literate, and not only in your domain, this will generate a lot of trust with your maybe future customers or future investors, because they understand, these persons, they know when you give them the money, they will take good care of that.
Right.
And maybe as a third element, this is also something that I'm frequently lacking a little bit when I'm listening to pitches. I think to understand your competition is super important. And also to disclose in the pitch, hey, look, they are doing that, they are doing, maybe they are better, they are there better, what is my differentiation? But not to try, for example, to hide the strongest competition, and invest sufficient time in also Googling around if there are others doing the same thing, because yes, this gives trust also to an investor when he or she sees that, they know the marketplace, and they are not kind of naive and say, now I'm inventing something, and then it turns out someone has already a search engine. But it is something that generates trust.
Yes, this is very important, what you just said. I also teach that in my workshops for pitches, to be very, very aware and very honest about competition, because the worst thing is when you do a pitch and then your investor asks you about your competition and you don't know, and they know.
Yeah, exactly. Or so it's actually exactly what I say. So either it is they know and you don't know, and then you can just pack your stuff and go away, because then you lost. Or you know them, but you haven't mentioned them. This is also bad, because then it is kind of or what's maybe also bad, that competition and you mention competition, but you don't know exactly what they do. So maybe your competitor analysis is 1 year old, and they already progressed a lot, and they maybe offer something that you consider was your USP, and then now they have it, or at least they promote it, and so spending 2 hours every week to scan the competitor landscape can give you really a good head start with these things.
This is also important for this culture of, when you're pitching something, you try to make yourself as best as possible. Let's put it like this. But what I've noticed is that it's actually better to be honest and modest.
Totally.
So this advice of yours is great, because you're usually pumped up to show all the great parts of your product or service. But actually, I think that it's better to teach the other thing, to be more down to earth, and not to be afraid to say, well, look, here's the competition, or here's what we're yet to make or learn or whatever.
I think the most important feeling that you have to generate in the stomachs of the investors is trust. And it's not, this is the most innovative thing and the craziest idea. I mean, this is necessary. If your idea is stupid or not innovative, then you don't even have to start. But the currency here is trust, because investors are giving you their money, or when you're pitching to customers are buying your service or buying your product, and you don't have a track record. I mean, if I'm buying something, I don't know, from IBM or from Nestle or so, even if it doesn't work, I always has a good excuse. Well, I bought it from the big guys. But if you want the customer to buy from you, that has no name, that maybe had a job, then trust is the currency. And I think all the elements, such as knowing your competition, having a good team, maybe not focusing too much on the fast exit. I'm there also from the long run, and being down to earth, knowing the competition. This helps to generate this feeling of trust with investors or customers.
Great. This is literally proving one of our partners. We talked with him about his idea that more experienced business people need to be in startups. One of the reasons is literally the experience they have for younger startup founders, to make them more trustworthy, as you just said. So this is a great example of that. Thank you for sharing this. So I think we covered everything. Not everything, but a lot of topics we opened. Thank you again for joining us and for taking the time to talk to the founders in Serbia and to our listeners. I will also ask you if you'd be eager to share your contact for founders to contact you and ask you if they have any particular questions that you can help them with.
Yes, sure. I mean, we'll probably be able to then include that in the streamed version. Yes, you can do that.
Yes, we're going to be putting that in the list of links. So thank you again. And for our viewers, thank you for watching this conversation. And for more entrepreneurial wisdom, please follow Raising Starts and Science and Technology Park on social media. And in June, there will be more conversations coming. So Andrzej, thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Kako.